Hello and welcome to another episode of Nothing Ventured with me, Aarish Shah. Today in the studio, I am really excited to have with me Milena Nikolic. Milena is an engineer and platform builder and co-founder of Heighway Labs, building what she calls generative UX, a consumer product plus a platform for dynamically generating intent-driven visual and interactive experiences. She spent more than a decade at Google, rising from a new grad software engineer to senior engineering director across search infrastructure, Android, and Google Play. She left Google to become CTO at Trainline, a 4-year stint that put her on the company leadership team and exposed her to finance, commercial, and legal functions that go beyond engineering. In today's episode, we talk about why it's never been more important to build for customers and to build for scale.
That's kind of something that I kept with me throughout the career, even when I moved into Trainline. The idea that you build for customers first and that kind of everything else follows out of that, and that you build technical systems that are ready to scale for a lot of traffic, for a lot of use cases.
How in big companies, it's easy to stay hidden.
I felt that no matter how well or how poorly myself or my teams do, Google stock price will not suffer.
Why, though we can all make bread at home, we don't necessarily choose to, and how the same applies for vibe coding.
The fact that a lot of people will be able to vibe code or agentically code doesn't mean that people will want to.
Why Google is not going to overhaul search in a quarter.
Kind of just imagine this is like the amount of money that's at risk if there is like a disruptive change, which is why they're kind of edging little changes, and that again opens the doors for startups to do something way more drastic.
And how Milena thinks about the future of acquisition and discovery.
Love it. Like, I think it's really, really interesting. With every significant technical innovation, there came a change to distribution channels.
How we still haven't figured out the native ad format for agentic systems and AI native products.
We now all spend probably more time on Instagram actually looking at ads than posts from our friends,
I've noticed that recently, yeah, for sure.
So it's not obvious how that format looks in conversational chatbot. It feels very yucky, it feels disingenuous.
What progressive enrichment does for user experience.
How much do you tell people initially about what they ask? So again, they're not faced with that ever-scrolling wall of text that keeps sending.
And how communicating preference is one of the reasons you can't automate absolutely everything.
There is a lot of talk around agentic and how we're going to automate everything. And interfaces are not needed anymore because everything will be automated. Now, I think one thing that people are forgetting when that comes up is that actually the hardest part is us making our own minds and us communicating preference.
Let's get straight into it. Hi there, whilst I've got you for a second, I thought I'd reintroduce myself. My name's Aarish. I'm the host of Nothing Ventured, the podcast where we talk to the people behind the stories that make the venture ecosystem go around. I'm also the founder of Emerge One, a consultancy that provides fractional CFO support to venture-backed tech startups from seed to Series B and beyond. If you enjoy the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe and share wherever it is that you listen. And if you ever want to have a conversation about anything you hear on the podcast or really anything else, do reach out on LinkedIn or on X. I'm always up for a bit of a natter. Right, let's get straight back into it. Milena, really thankful that you could join me here today. I obviously had a bit of a reshuffle due to some tooth problems last week, which hopefully I'm going to be more or less sorted with by tomorrow. But thank you so much for coming out and joining me.
Pleasure is all mine. Happy to be here. Yeah, and I get life. Yeah, life moves fast. So yeah.
Things do happen. Let's dive straight in. Right, you've said right in previous conversations that we've had that you kind of learnt what it means to build tech outside of the comfort of big tech, right? And at Heighway, what are the big kind of tech organizational behaviors that you deliberately kept and which did you abandon? And what are the sort of trade-offs in hiring or governance that produce failure modes?
I think one of the things I've learned in the first decade of my career at Google, which is kind of, I guess, as big as it gets in terms of technology companies, is this type of building for scale and building for, for future for kind of the customers who will love your experience in billions. And that's kind of something that I kept with me throughout the career, even when I moved into Trainline, which is still a reasonably large public, kind of mid-cap company. And that I also kept when I went into Heighway. The idea that you build for customers first, and that kind of everything else follows out of that, and that you build technical systems that prototype or not, are ready to scale for a lot of traffic, for a lot of use cases. So I think some of those, like thinking about scale early on and continuing, that's something that I've kind of learned in big tech and kept with me. There are a lot of things that I've also learned that I had to kind of unlearn and do differently, but I think those are some that I will be forever taking with me.
What are the ones that you unlearned?
I think in big companies, there we go. It's like in big companies, it's very easy to hide in the mass of a lot of people. Even as a moderately senior person, kind of I felt that no matter how well or how poorly myself or my teams do, Google stock price will not feel that. It will not suffer. It kind of moves with the economy. It moves with a bunch of different things, but it probably doesn't move with one director's organization. And that was something that's on slow days it can feel comforting. On kind of days when you are really your best self, it just feels demotivating and kind of sad. So it's just kind of moving into somewhere smaller. There is less place to hide, and you're more on the hook. And I think that's both frightening at times and also the most exciting thing, the most empowering kind of engaging thing about working in a smaller place.
A couple of points that I kind of wanted to tease out there, right? So you talked about, you first build for customers, then you build for scale, right? But learned wisdom within startups is, start with an MVP. It doesn't matter if it's clunky, if it breaks or whatever, because you just need to ship quickly, get it in the hands of users and worry about scale later, because you don't know if you've got a product that needs to scale until you kind of get it out into those customers' hands. So how do you think about that? Because isn't there a balance between over-architecting for scale versus building something that is quick, shippable, that you can get feedback on immediately?
It's a good one, and I think it's I feel that duality used to be more of an issue back in the day and up until a couple of years ago when we were moving slow, when building was expensive and slow. Building is faster and way cheaper now than it ever was, and I think that kind of tames that duality to a significant degree. But even putting that to the side, I think once you learn how to build things well and at scale, you can do that very fast as well. Sure. So kind of you don't have to choose as much. I felt that with Heighway Labs, we took a bunch of shortcuts and did a lot of things like cowboys. And then kind of as people were joining later, and these were very credible people that worked in, some of the best engineering companies in the world, they would have a look and they would all be shocked how proper we are as kind of given that we're a startup. So I think there is that line where kind of like if you know how to do things well, even if you move very fast, they're still very solid at the basis.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So the change, as you mentioned, right, is, so I've had Mukund Jha, who's the founder of Emergent, on the podcast, right? And, he, Emergent is a lovable type vibe coding app, right? But, the metric that he threw out at me was like in the year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is that Emergent has been live, he reckons that the value of all the apps that have been built on the platform, had they have been built by an outsourced agency, approaches sort of $2 billion, right? Like it's just incredible. And what that tells you is if you are able to build production-ready apps at such a low price point, to your point, you can build products that scale. And in fact, actually, I remember asking him this very specifically. Those, anything built on that platform can scale to hundreds of thousands of users. Like it is inherently set up for that. So do you think that in that kind of wisdom then just can be thrown out of the window, right? Like, yes, you can both ship fast as well as ship for scale. Like, is that a new paradigm now?
I think we're going that way. I think there are a lot of problems that are still hard and, require some of the best engineers in the world and proper engineering and problem solving and not everyone can get them out of the box, no matter the platform they use. But equally, there is a lot that has been democratized to a significant degree. If you need your promotional website for a product or service, or a wedding RSVP website, or some of those that are like, it just spin it up in hours, if not less, if not in minutes. So a lot of those things are now just complete no-brainer. That doesn't mean there are no hard technical problems to be solved, and even, dare I say, technical modes to be had by the right engineering teams who know how to do things in the right way. So I think it's, again, not either or, but it's kind of the change and democratization in this like simple use case is, I think, fantastic and fun to witness and be part of.
Yeah, I think it's such a massive change. I mean, like you're obviously a highly technical person. I'm a highly non-technical person, despite having tried at various points in my life, right? But the transformations for me has been amazing. I remember having conversations with engineers, 7 years ago, and I was like, I want to build this product, and what we do, and they were just build this website and do this and do that, and I'm like, I don't know how to do any of this stuff. And now I'm like, shipping out, I wouldn't say shipping out products, but I'm shipping workflows out that I'm using internally, in hours, right? And that would have previously required engineering time. We haven't hit scaling problems with those because they are internal tools, but at some point, if we do, then that can be dealt with at that time.
For sure.
I guess one question I have, right, is almost, there is this sort of, there's this sort of meme that, okay, anyone can vibe code anything. And I do agree, you can, right? Like you can vibe code most things, right? But actually what that means is if most things can be vibe coded, that means most people can vibe code anything, which means for really seriously technically difficult products and applications, you still need, in fact, probably more so than ever, you really need those kind of deep technical skills. Would you agree with that? Like, is the future founder even more of a technology person than a kind of sector expert necessarily, because actually software is no longer the mode?
It's so much to unpack here, and what a time we live in when kind of all of this is changing. So it's very exciting. First of all, I think the fact that a lot of people will be able to vibe code or agentically code or whatever is going to be the nice word of kind of writing code in natural language. It doesn't mean that people will want to. I think the famous example is we can all make bread at home, and how many of us choose to do that? Not many, right? Like, so it's kind of, I definitely think that will be the future. I think a lot of people will get charmed, kind of try to build their own app, build an occasional app every once in a while, just like I bake sourdough, kind of 3 times a year. But for the most things, I will still be very happy to shell out $5 a month for a software as a service thing that I use, or a little tool that I use here and there, or periodically, or regularly, or kind of something like that. So I think that's one thing. Now this other thing around like, who are the founders of the future? Even if software is not the hard thing to solve anymore, distribution will be hard. Go to market will be harder than ever. I think awareness, there is just so much being created right now that I feel the hardest thing is actually getting people's attention.
Yeah, sure.
And that's where it's kind of like, I don't know to what degree founders of the future will be solving go-to-market problems in a deeply technical way versus building software in a deeply technical way versus doing something completely else. So it's kind of, I suspect that skill set might kind of move and change, and I don't know to what degree it'll be algorithmical versus your, coding versus kind of all that. And then the final thing, and I think you touched on it, and I think I touched on it previously as well. There are always hard technical problems to solve, and sometimes I run into this thing. We show some of our demos to prospective customers, and many of them immediately resonate with, and they're like, holy crap, this is amazing, how do we get in on it, and kind of all that. And then every once in a while I run into a company or a leader in a company who says like, we think we could build this
ourselves.
We could build this ourselves. And maybe in some cases they're right. In most cases I don't think they are. When you make something really well, it looks effortless, and it is not. I know the fantastic team that I hired, and I know the hard work that it took us to build some of the stuff we built. So I'm always I just chuckle every time. I'm like, oh gosh, okay, you're going to lose a year trying. This is like, that's sort of, so I think there is something around AI, especially around the fact that we talk to it in natural language that made people feel like they can do anything.
Yeah, sure.
They can do anything. And, in theory, maybe, but at what cost? Like kind of, if really to do it will require you to hire 10 amazing AI or search engineers and spend a year developing it, wouldn't it have been cheaper to actually buy it from the byproducts? So it's kind of, I think also that line is, I find it's like incredible sign of maturity in leaders in the business now, the ones who correctly get in this crazy fast moving time, buy versus build decisions. I think that's what so many are getting wrong. And I think it's such a sign of leadership maturity.
Yeah, where should we focus our resources, right?
Exactly.
Often scarce resources. In fact, actually, my previous guest, we were talking about exactly this. Like thinking through, the argument for corporations is not think through what can you build, but actually what shouldn't you be building, right?
So true.
And a couple of things that came out of that, like I think we can build it ourselves is now the same as why can't Google build it, right? Like, that question was it's always really frustrating because Google has its priorities and will build whatever the priority is, for example, Meta or whoever it might be. And that question to founders was always like, in my mind, a little bit silly because, okay, if Google thought that this was a priority, they would have built it, right? For example. And equally, again, to your point, it seems easy, right? It seems, well, we could build this ourselves. Yeah, okay, fine. But okay, what is the trade-off? What resources are you going to have to switch out of dealing with, problem X to solve now problem Y? And actually, is this a core part of your stack, or is it, or is it just, something that would be great to have, but not something that's going to fundamentally shift necessarily kind of your business or business model, right? Sure. And the perfect example for that is, people out there vibe coding an an ERP system, or trying to build a Salesforce replacement with all the functionality. Well, guess what? There's security issues, there's scaling issues, there's all of those sort of problems, right? So yeah, I think again, in a world where you can do pretty much anything, it doesn't necessarily mean that you should.
It's exactly it. Yeah. On the point around will big tech do it? We obviously got that question a bunch of times, and I'm pretty sure every founder does. Having been at Google for 13 years, I know a little bit of the other side of this. Big tech is fighting so many battles with regulators, with other big tech, with more than anything inertia within the company, because you have all these like extremely well-paid people that are not really motivated to rock the boat. So kind of
it's a corporation.
It's a corporation. So it's kind of like, so I'm always bullish on like startup against kind of big tech. Not in every case. Sometimes distribution is the biggest moat, really, but in many cases, really, kind of startups just have the advantage of moving faster. That's just so fantastic compared to big tech. And then the last thing that big tech has as an issue is all these successful products mean that you have to report these metrics usually quarterly for shareholders to understand. You have to kind of keep up with the treadmill of revenue expectations and goal expectations and all that. And that means that Google is not going to overhaul search in a quarter. So yeah, kind of, I always see, having been on both sides, I see the pros and cons of both sides.
Yeah, no, look, I think, I think again, as I said, like the question is kind of just it's a bit of an average question, right? And the point is also, the question is not, well, why wouldn't Google build this? It's like, okay, but why haven't they already built it, right? And if you are building something that they haven't built, that surely shows that, there is a market need for it and one that isn't being addressed, right? And yeah, look, I mean, you're going to come across competition, you'll come across all sorts of things, but that's kind of what building a startup is all about, right? Yeah. So obviously Heighway Labs is all about UX, right? You argue for visual discovery and generative UX over Google style intent, a bit of a Google bash going on at the moment. But if those interfaces displace search and SEO, must a product team abandon kind of ad-funded economics to preserve UX, or accept monetization compromises that degrade that visual experience? How do you think about that?
It's just kind of fun to like, I'm still long Google, I still hold stock, love the company, this is sort of like, there's no bashing. It's just, because I have that perspective, I kind of always bring it in the conversation as just,
I was
think,
Google bashing. I was the same
there we
way,
go.
yeah.
It's just like, no, it's all good. It's all good. Future, I think future of acquisition and discovery is, I mean, that is one of the topics that I nerd on. Like, I love it. Like, I think it's really, really interesting. With every significant technical innovation, there came a change to distribution channels. You know, kind of when web was invented, then everything moved from real world to digital.
Yeah.
When and then the search engines kind of became a thing, and both the SEO and kind of organic acquisition as well as paid ad models in that vein. When mobile apps kind of became a thing, or when mobile phones became a thing, app stores became an important distribution vehicle, and kind of the way we discover apps through app stores. When social networks became a thing, that ever scrolling feed kind of content, and new ad formats that came with that, which were more passive, less intent heavy, this kind of obviously the same will happen now with AI world. I don't think it's still obvious to anyone exactly how it's going to pan out, but we have a unprecedented change to the technology landscape. Every business is being affected by it. I think for now, the conversations are still largely around productivity and like what does every business get in terms of productivity. Sometimes in terms of features, like what is the new thing we could build now that we have AI capabilities. I think even that is early. And I think the more and more this goes, we will realize that traffic flows in different ways. We don't start with as a keyword search on Google anymore and then go to website 1 and then website 2 and website 3 and then patch up a story of what's actually happening. We might start in that one magic box in Claude or in ChatGPT or in Gemini, wherever it is.
Where we end is somewhere else.
Where we end is somewhere else. Do we end up in some sort of different agentic experience that's still owned by these big tech, big agent companies, big token companies? Do we end up at agentic experience that's owned by those little businesses or medium-sized businesses that now run websites? I think there's so many interesting questions around acquisition, but my bet is that in kind of 5 or 10 years down the line, possibly less, possibly 3 to 5, it's going to look very different. We will not be accessing websites and apps in the same way as we are today. I think that underlying fiber of how we discover services and how we access them is going to change. And with that changing, then there is the question of what do businesses get for free? What do they get in terms of organic rankings? What do they get because it's earned and deserved and because that's what customers are looking for and kind of all of that? What do they have to pay for? How do the two combine and mash? And at Heighway Labs, we have a big set of thesis related to that as well. We're sort of ready for that future in a couple of different scenarios. But yeah, I could talk about that for ages. I'm not going to bother you, but yeah, it's really interesting.
I love it. I mean, like this is stuff that obviously within the world of finance is something that is super
Huge.
important, right? Because if your unit economics start shifting, if your acquisition strategy has to change, distribution costs increase or potentially decrease or whatever, right? Like that changes your strategy around everything else. I mean, I remember, I think OpenAI tried a couple of things within the kind of ChatGPT ecosystem where, it surfaces quite clearly kind of suggested, let's call it applications or destinations. And one has to think that that's probably some form of ad monetization. And then, but then it kind of disappeared as well because it felt like a bit awkward, I think, right? Especially if you're paying a couple of $100 a month. But to your point around like, where do you go? Are you going to go to a website or whatever? Like I think about this, Salesforce has an MCP that integrates into, your LLM. You're no longer going to go necessarily to salesforce.com. You're just going to be using it almost unseen. You're going to be mining the data from within your kind of chat interface as opposed to your AI interface or even having an agent just doing it rather than going, clicking, logging on and doing stuff. And I think the nature of how we interact, right, and this is exactly the point of Heighway Labs, is I don't think we're even anywhere near even anywhere near what it's going to look like in the future. And you and I discussed this, in terms of we went from the internet being a wall of text to having this beautiful, delightful kind of garden of various different apps and websites and so on. Now we've gone back to walls of text, right? And like at some point that has to change. I think the question around this whole acquisition strategy is, and obviously there are lots of people now consulting and promoting their services around this, is how do you get featured more in an LLM, right? And I think that becomes super important.
The thing called generic engine optimization. The reason I think the thing that hasn't been figured out yet, in my opinion, is the native ad format of the AI native products. Because AI native products are conversational chatbots right now, it's just not obvious what is a nice native way to incorporate ads into that. Google made its trillions really now in the kind of as an ad machinery, because it had a very obvious native ad format, which was that same blue link with a little snippet, just like all the organic results on Google.
But with sponsored.
But just with sponsor label, you have to mark it, but it's kind of it looks the same, it fits the same, so it's kind of it belongs in that product. It's native to the product. Meta now, Instagram made lots of money in ads because they have figured out that you can have ads exactly like posts, and there's promoted posts, and it's very native, it's normal. We now all spend probably more time on Instagram actually looking at ads than posts from our friends,
I've noticed that recently,
for sure. This is so it's not obvious how that format looks in conversational chatbot thing. Kind of, do you just slip in a line? It feels very yucky, it feels disingenuous that kind of for that to be there, do you somehow mark it? That's not right. So I think that the issue with monetizing through ads in AI native products is that there hasn't been the right native ad format figured out. Now, I'm not sure there will ever be the right native ad format as long as that stays conversational chatbot. However, if we move to a different format of consuming AI products, AI native products, like for example, Heighway Labs is trying to create and creating, then I think native ad formats become much more obvious, much more natural, much more incorporated, and I think that entire side of the business kind of opens up. And then the only other thing that I will touch from what you were saying, and a lot of good things that are there actually, I'm super aligned. This whole idea that services only become backends, through MCP or API or data ingestion or whichever technical integration point happens. I think a lot of people subscribe to this vision. I'm almost shocked how many people genuinely believe that this is how it's going to go, that we're only ever going to experience the entirety of internet, the entirety of the service through ChatGPT or through Claude, and
I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to go that way. That's kind of that they fully control the entire experience. They surely want to. They'd be happy to. Everyone, whoever controls the UI, controls the decision, and once you control the decision, you control the money, you control everything. But it's if you are Nike or you are Four Seasons or you even Greg's, as a brand, you stand for something and you communicate what you stand for with imagery on your website, with a font selection, with colors, with tone of voice, with all of these things. If you are Four Seasons or Nike or even Greg's, you're not just going to go down easy and say, sure, take away everything that differentiates me from my customers. Doesn't matter. Forget about the decades of marketing money that Nike put into their brand identity. I will now just be reduced to a line in OpenAI's interface. Like, of course, it's not going to go that way. Yeah. And they will vote for things not to go that way by not giving their marketing dollars into that company. However, if there is a service out there that figures out a way for them to feature in this AI native product in a way that allows them to compete on something more than the price, in a way that allows them to preserve their brand identity, their tone of voice, their imagery, their kind of what they stand for, and ultimately the premium they may or may not charge on the back of that, or just the brand loyalty they get out of it. They will want to spend their marketing dollars there and to get engaged and kind of all that. So again, that's the future we're building.
Yeah, I mean, look, I use the web and apps all the time. I'm neither an AI maximalist nor a Luddite, right? Like, so I use it where appropriate, where I don't need to use it, I don't use it. where a Google search is going to be quicker and faster and more whatever. I'm going to use that, right? And I think, I think as humans, we tend to kind of think about new technologies and just, again, over-index, right? And this whole thing about overestimating the impact in the short term, underestimating the impact in the long term, right? Like, I think, lots of people, kind of write off everything, because, oh, wow, coding is dead, finance is dead, everything is dead. Like, it's killed, Claude has supposedly killed every industry on the planet.
People love a good headline. They love a good black and white, dead a lot.
Completely unnuanced. And I think there is a middle road, right? And I think, to your point, I don't think that middle road has been found. But let's not forget how early this all is, right?
That.
Like, I mean, AI as an industry is decades and decades old, right? As a technology is decades and decades old. But in its current format of chat interface, it's recent, right? And who knows what that next interface might be? The next interface may be visual, or it may be via gestures, or it, maybe Neuralink works and it'll be, direct.
Why not?
Direct brain interface. I mean, who knows, right? Yeah. But the point is, I think it is not valuable to necessarily bet on one outcome versus the other, because history has shown us that this changes all the time, right? And the speed at which certainly AI is accelerating, changing, morphing. I always say this. In February this year, I'd go on X and the entire world was saying Gemini's killed it. It's like, that's it, game over. This is the only tool you're ever going to use. Yeah. And 3 months later, it's Claude, right? Claude, and then 3 months from now, who knows who it might be again, right? So I think there's so much space to yet be explored.
On that note of, like, it's too early to judge anything. I was lucky enough to be on very early on Android team at Google. Like, I was one of the first, I remember now, maybe 100 people on the Android OS as a whole, even just around the time of the first post-acquisition, just before the first version launched, around when I think I joined. But more importantly, I was one of the first 5 engineers on what is now Google Play.
Oh, amazing.
And what used to be Android Market at the time, like the App Store of Android, the first version. And just seeing that, and then I stayed, I think, for 8 years in that same team, and just seeing that go from Android from 0 users to 3 billion users, Google Play from 0 money to, I'm not sure what's the last figure that I'm supposed to, but like double-digit billions, and kind of on its own would be a Fortune 500 company, and just kind of seeing that growth. I remember if you remember now, actually, for the first couple of years on the app stores, both on the Apple one and on the Google one, the biggest mobile apps were screensaver apps and ringtone apps and like silly little tools and widgets. This was the time before, and then only a few years in, you started to get like really transformational mobile experiences, like, I guess, Spotify or certainly apps like Instagram or TikTok or Snap. Even mobile gaming,
even which Facebook, was like web first. It took ages for them to go.
To move, mobile games, which is where a lot of the money moves in terms of mobile apps. You didn't have that until, and then a few years in, you had Clash of Clans and Candy Crush Saga and kind of all that, and then you move to more sophisticated games and all that. So kind of, I keep reminding, like, I had a period when I started Heighway Labs, about 2 years into AI revolution, and I was beating myself so much in the first couple of months for, why did I not go earlier? Are we too late? And then it's just kind of now, and then that perspective dawned on me of kind of like, good God, we are now still in the ringtone and screensaver app of mobile apps, and maybe just Candy Crush Saga is launching kind of in terms of games, and kind of there is just so much left to this transformation, and the biggest winners and the biggest players, and how the whole thing pans out will probably take another few years at least. It might be five plus. So that's
I think that's a really, really good analogy. And by the way, was a fierce Android user fan for like forever. It
Thank
took
you.
like I switched to Apple devices one by one. I got a Mac Airbook because my Windows device kept just dying.
Yeah.
And then I bought this iPad because I needed it for some of the stuff I do when I travel and here in the studio and so on.
Yeah.
And then I finally moved to an iPhone like last year, maybe the year before. I can't remember now.
Right.
But I configured it in exactly the same way my Android phone was configured, just because like that's just how my brain worked and how I like. But yeah, there was a period where I just, because I actually found the iPhone really counterintuitive, like in terms of usability. Like everyone would say it like it's so easy to use, and I'd be like, it's too easy to use. There's something wrong with it. Whereas with Android, I could play around and do it. So if I'm like, thank you very much, you gave me many years of joy.
There we go.
Using my Android phones. So look, I mean, we've just been talking a little bit about this, right? But on this whole topic of designing AI native mobile interfaces, right? You say you kept some Apple, Google, Snap kind of patterns, but you broke others to avoid AI wallpaper UX, right? Like just this constant stream of the same thing. What are the specific platform behaviors that you sacrificed? And what sort of product fragility or adoption costs did that create? And what sort of trade-offs were involved?
It's such an interesting thing, right? Like it's kind of getting this right, and I feel we are learning every day as we kind of our first product, Heighway Stories, Heighway consumer app is in the App Store, both Play Store and App Store. We had kind of quite a few users through the product, and I feel still daily I check all the dashboards and I analyze the topicality of the queries and what people are looking for and how they're interacting with the product. And I feel we're learning so much. We're rolling changes out almost daily, certainly weekly, in a quite a meaningful way, with a very, very exciting change coming up soon as well. And it's I think all of this is moving a lot. Initially, when we launched, people try to use us just like a Google app. So with this keyword-based search, you type in, winter jackets female or something like. It's just kind of this keyword stuff. And then I think you really need to pull people out of that and educate them and tell them like, no, feel free to specify in a very detailed way. Like, I'm going to a summer wedding in Italy. What should I wear to feel both comfortable and stylish? It's kind of what will work for both church and kind of and the chateau or whatever. It just really took a while. And I think only now we're getting to the point, and this is few years into ChatGPT, where people are finally getting retrained to say what they want in plain English rather than try to hack it in this keyword-based way. And then kind of how that forms into conversation. So some of the kind of most interesting problems for us that we solved were, there is a question of something we call progressive enhancement or progressive enrichment. Just how much do you tell people initially about what they ask versus, so again, they're not faced with that ever scrolling wall of text that keeps sending. And in our case, it's not a text, it's images and text. So it's kind of, it's a little bit more delightful, or so I like to believe. And it's also in a format which is more akin to Instagram stories. So it's this kind of mobile first, the tap through kind of a format, which was chosen on purpose. I felt no one is really even trying to solve AI on mobile. It felt so optimized for desktop because you type a lot and then you read a lot of text and you type a lot. So I was like, no, let's try to, how would this look actually on mobile as you're on the go, you can't type a lot, you just want to see things very quickly. And then I think that became kind of the whole thing around, okay, you're seeing screen by screen worth of information and you can very easily tap through it and you get a bit of imagery, a bit of text, or some UX component related to it. How long should that initial story be? Kind of like, should we assume that you'll tap through 30 slides or only 3, or is it somewhere in between? And how exactly does that work?
Does it follow the same patterns as like a social media app, like in terms of 7 seconds or whatever it is? Before you flick past or scroll through?
Exactly that. It's kind of like, and we tried it all. We tried like a 3 slide and 30 slide, and then we kind of found a sweet spot through like just retention analysis for how long people swipe through what we think is that initial first look of the story that you can very quickly go through, get initial understanding, and then make it very easy from there on to add more, to deep dive, to branch out, to pivot, to kind of request, to kind of build your own story, to build your own answer to whatever you're looking for. So I think that was there was just a lot of analysis in that kind of that initial chunking, the progressive kind of enhancement. How do you do these easy actions and easy ability for people to evolve the content and the answer without, again, having to type in a lot of replies. And we still let them type replies, and many people do, but also we give suggested actions and replies based on what we think is the most likely thing people will want at that stage. So yeah, there's been a lot of kind of work on, those are just some of the UX patterns that we have looked into.
And so, if you were to compare like the experience to say Instagram or Snapchat or whatever, right? Like how, I guess you talked about it earlier, right? Like in the sense of, okay, is it this keyword search or is it the natural language, right? And I almost feel like there are some times where I will have a conversation with whatever AI. Yeah. And there are some times where I will literally just shorthand stuff because it's just here.
Not gonna bother you.
Tell me this, right? Or whatever. Are we? I guess we're still figuring it out, right? Like I think this is the point, right? And so, do you think? Because I think it's bi-directional, right? Like not only are you creating a sort of new UX experience for how you interact with AI, but that will have to pass over to these other apps as well, right? Like at some point.
Passing the context and the intent. Yeah, for sure. It's so many interesting learnings. This is the I find, for example, there is a lot of talk around agentic and how we're going to automate everything. And interfaces are not needed anymore because everything will be automated. Yeah. Now, I think one thing that people are forgetting when that comes up is that actually the hardest part is us making our own minds. Yeah. And us communicating preference. So there are all these, including some by my friends, startups, for example, in the travel space that kind of are building this magical travel agent that'll just go and book you the trip that you want.
Impossible.
And I was literally, I agree. Kind of, I don't think, I travel a lot and I travel sometimes for work, just on my own. Sometimes I travel just with my partner. Sometimes I travel with my kid, with my mom, with my friends. I think, and every trip is different. Every year I do one or two or a few of these. I don't have a single travel preference. If kind of that trip looks very different when I go just with my partner, and it looks very different when I travel with a group of 10 friends to a festival, or kind of so it's sort of, there is no single travel preference. There would need to be 30 years of this exact same behavior for me, for any company to have enough data, or any technical system, AI, to have enough data to predict what kind of travel will I want. And I'm not waiting 30 years. So ultimately, I just have to kind of specify every time. Are we looking for Airbnb or a hotel? Are we looking for, premium or more in the budget? Are we looking for train or plane or, the aisle seat or the window seat, or kind of like all of this changes every single time. Now, if I were to sit down and in one go, write all that out, that would be the most boring trip planning ever, or even to dictate it, just having to sit and kind of say, all right, okay, and it'll be this, and this will be my preference, and don't forget to check my BA, status number because I want those points. And there's just so many different things to do. So I think the thing that people are missing is that this entire agentic magic of, autonomous systems really needs to have a very significant UX component around taking our preferences and doing it in a way that doesn't feel like interrogation fatigue, where like I'm now suddenly faced with 50 questions or 50 filters, checkboxes, and whatever else kind of text box options, and I don't have to write too much, but kind of in a way that's delightful, that helps me gradually narrow down while inspiring me and getting me excited about that trip or whatever that is. Take me on that journey where I ultimately end up with everything planned, everything booked, everything kind of easy and simple, as a combination of, kind of start somewhere with a vague idea, give me a few options, maybe I tap, I select, I get excited, then I share a few other nuggets of information, then the system continues to kind of zone in and so on. So it's kind of, and I think that's a problem for travel. The same is for shopping. It's kind of like I shared this example recently of, I was buying a birthday present for my mom. And I was also like, kind of I was trying to brainstorm with ChatGPT and just keep coming up with generic nonsense. And then it was trying to extract information out of me to make it less generic. And it was just so joyless. I was just kind of like, oh no, I'm not your assistant. I'm not going to give you suddenly like 500 pages on what my mom loves. So there needs to be like a shopping experience, which is combination of those two. It's kind of like takes me on a journey, helps me get inspired, allows me to very easily give a little bit of input as it goes. And it's this combination of browse and intent specification and input specification and preference kind of setting as you go in a way that's I don't think experiences like this exist yet in shopping, in travel, in almost anything that's a consumer use case yet. And I think it's a little bit different at work, right? Like at work, I don't mind connecting all the MCPs and I don't care about the UX and I'll just, I'm happy to work on the command line and write bash scripts. That's what I've been doing most of my life. I'm okay with that. But when I'm doing things that I enjoy, that are part of my lifestyle, like restaurant planning for a dinner outing or travel planning or buying an outfit for a party or whatever, all those things I want experience around it. I want UX around it and I want that UX to be smarter with AI, but also delightful and fun and nice and not I don't want it to feel like
not
job.
mechanic.
Not mechanic, yeah.
I think, I talk about that problem, not in terms of UX, but just in more general terms with AI, which is context, right? Like, it's one of the reasons I don't believe, at least for the time being, a CFO, for example, can be replaced in an early stage or even a later stage business. Because why? Because half of the conversations that I had outside of the room. They're not captured anywhere, right? And that conversation could be everything from, the fact that the founder is in their 30s with 2 kids, and therefore, has a very, very different expectation of outcomes than someone who's, say, 20 years old or someone who's 50 years old, or someone who doesn't have kids or whose kids are grown up or whatever, right? And so I think context, trust, and just going through a process which not only, and I think there's 2 things, not only where it feels delightful, but where you can see the working, if that makes sense, right?
Yes.
Because otherwise you're basically getting an output which is like, but how did you come up with this?
Yeah.
What is the rationale?
Yeah.
Like for something like your mum's birthday gift, right? Or something similar, like you're looking to be inspired rather than to be told, right? And understanding why on the basis of the 5 or 6 things that you may have told the chatbot, what are your mum's preferences, why it's a special occasion, what, et cetera, et cetera. I think because we can't see it, like, so for me, it's a lot of it is about trust, right? Because you can't see it, you can't necessarily trust it because you don't know what's happening under the hood.
Exactly.
The interesting thing you were talking about travel and that, like, it hit me in the head quite painfully because we're planning a trip in Southeast Asia a little later this summer, and as a family of 4, right? We have one daughter, like my kids are adults, right? 18 and 25. So the 25-year-old suffers from multiple allergies.
Yeah.
That's a problem, right? My wife prefers kind of beach sort of vacations, whereas my younger daughter wanted an activity one. I'm sort of just like, I don't care, it's fine, but like, let's not overload it. And actually the toing and froing, and my younger daughter like planned it all using ChatGPT.
Nice.
But we went through like, I don't know how many iterations of the same thing. And we changed our minds about stuff. So we decided we're not going to do a beach bit. We're just going to do city, and then we're going to do, day trip. Like the amount of context required to figure all of that out and the repetition, to your point, it becomes exhausting to the point where you're like, actually, I'm just going to go on Google and search for XYZ and just figure it
something.
out.
Yeah. No, it's such a good point. The point about trust, I think, is really, really, really important. This is, if any of us are going to part with non-trivial money or non-trivial time, you need to understand why and how it got there,
Or data.
Or data, exactly, or data, or anything that's meaningful. You're not parting with anything meaningful if you don't understand where it came from. It's kind of like, I will maybe trust an agent to book me, if I commute every day to every morning, buy me a train ticket for the same train.
Fine.
5 or whatever, $15, doesn't matter. It's easy. I'm not going to trust it, $5,000 for a family holiday of the year. It's like, no, just like I will need to understand how it got there and why and what. So I think there is that aspect of stake, understanding the kind of the thought process and how kind of certain things work. And again, sorry to keep coming back on this. It's sort of like obviously a topic close to my heart, but I think that's UX. That's the thing. That entire thing of collaboration, agreement, trust, understanding the context, the why, making sure it says like the whole thing with AI is that it's meant to make our lives deeply more like it's meant to make services deeply more personalized to our lives, like much more catered, much more tailored to what we're trying to do. So kind of if I don't understand that it really is, why would I just trust it? So and I think all of those components are components of UX.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating, and I think there's so much yet to be done. Switching lanes a little bit, right? So you shipped a consumer visual search product as a thesis proof whilst building a broader platform. By prioritizing consumer growth, do you accept a trade-off, slower B2B monetization or diluted engineering focus? And which downside did you think or accept as tolerable?
It's a very good question. So because we are so thesis driven, that's my co-founder Martin and I have bonded over this idea of generative UX and the ecosystem of agents and how is distribution and interfaces, how is that changing in the world of AI? So kind of we were always thesis first, and we sort of there are many different product ideas we wanted to chase in this world. We decided to start with a consumer product because it was most standalone thing. We felt like if we will be fighting technical uncertainty and proving, can we do all of this? We had this very strict bar on us that these experiences that are generated and deeply personalized to people's intent they had to load in 2 seconds. And, we met that up. And in order, we had to start with a consumer product because we thought that's the only way to meaningfully test our thesis first.
It's ultimately, irrespective of whether you're B2B or consumer, it's ultimately a consumer facing.
Correct, exactly. The B2B side would be B2B2C, if that makes sense. So kind of, so that's why we shipped this first. Once we did, we felt, we already feel we're proving the thesis, or we have proven it already. Interesting thing happened in February, I think, this year when we launched on LinkedIn. We were in stealth for more than 6 months, quietly developing, delightful time, just really fun, kind of it's kind of really enjoyed it. And then at some stage, the time came to actually talk a little bit more openly around what we do. As we did that, we got a lot of pull from investors, of course, but also from the rest of the industry, from a lot of operators out there. They're wondering the same, people in medium-sized companies, large companies, small companies, all wondering, what does this mean for me? I'm more and more, my business is getting discovered in ChatGPT. What does that mean for the future? How should I be thinking about this? What happens to my brand? I don't want to just be the API or the backend for ChatGPT. How are you guys thinking? What are you cooking? We got so much outreach related to it that we realized that we have to pull the B2B side sooner than it is, which is one of those things that everyone tells you shouldn't do as a startup, that you should just massively focus on one thing and kind of have full focus. And we felt that there is enough promise with a consumer product because it's getting attention. People like it. They're sticking around. They're coming back to it. They're coming back daily, many of our users. At the same time, we had this very strong pull, possibly in a way that's going to be quicker to monetize. So we kind of started chasing that as well. So yes, we're now working on two in parallel. I am aware that it might mean that we're moving slower on each because we're kind of doing two. I think the way we're doing it, and again, going back to our original kind of part of discussion, I think when you learn to build things in this highly leveraged way in big tech companies,
you can do more of that.
You can do more of that. Yeah, it's basically a shared platform. Long story short, it's a shared platform between two. And by investing in one, we're 90% getting benefit for the other. And that's kind of allows us to do both, even though we're a small team of 12 of us.
Well, yeah, I mean, and to your point, right, the consumer behaviors or the consumer facing app, the behaviors that you discover via that translate directly to the B2B app, right? Because ultimately, consumers are consumers, and if you are selling, if essentially your B2B customers is ultimately a B2B2C play, then consumers still stay at the heart, right? So actually, I almost think that actually having gone consumer first would have been absolutely the right methodology, because that's the quickest way to learn what the ultimate users of the product are going to be doing. I think it is really interesting, right? You know, it used to be, it always has been, right? Customers will always influence your business and the features that you release and so on and so forth. It also used to be that investors could influence that, right? Often the wrong way, right? Not necessarily the right way. But I think we're living in a world now where actually you can get, there's so many feedback loops, right? Like so many feedback loops that you can not just exploit, but, you know, really learn from. That again, like, I mean, this comes up again and again on the podcast. It's just never, and you said it yourself, there's never been a better time to go out and kind of build something, right? And I think the other thing is, like, again, because that cost of engineering has dropped significantly, at least to get something like out of the door quickly, etc. You can afford to fail, like often, right? Whether you're funded or not funded, right? In fact, if you're funded, even better, because you can focus on core, have someone spin up something that you just want to test, let it roll. If it works, then you dedicate some more resource to it. If not, you know, move away. But you know, I think actually just the rules of how you build a business will change quite significantly as we move forward. And I think we're all still stuck in the paradigms, you know, that are still kind of part of the lean startup mentality. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the lean startup mentality, but actually what I'm really seeing these days is properly lean startups, right? So you're a 12-person team. We had Sundar from Mozart AI on, you know, he got to 100,000 users with 4 people in the team or something like that. Like we are seeing, you know, we are really seeing the ability for very small teams to go out and really kind of kill things. Exciting times. I know you have a hard stop, so I wanted to end the conversation with a couple of questions we ask all of our guests. So firstly, what is one thing that you have a contrarian conviction about from any area of life, whether that's work, politics, socially, or at home?
I think I'm a big believer in doing things that make you happy first, as opposed to, you know, things that are being rational thing. I genuinely lived my life by that. As I stayed in some of the, you know, best places to work, best paying companies for more than a decade, never stayed for career reasons or for money reasons, for anything else, stayed because I was having lots of fun and learning a lot and kind of all that. And the moment that wasn't the case.
Rather than kind of optimizing for productivity or whatever.
Never in my life optimized for career move. Never in my life had a 5-year plan where I'm going to be. Every single time if you ask me, usually I wouldn't have an idea. Sometimes maybe I would have an idea, and then what happens 5 years later is completely different. So it's sort of like, it was always this kind of like, what feels really exciting right now, and then trust the gut feel, and then work hard to make it happen. Kind of that part doesn't go away. But I think this thing around, you know, being thoughtful and having 10-year plans and 20-year plans about kind of all that, it just never worked for me. So maybe that's the one.
I also kind of feel like that's out of the window in this current, I have, as I said, young daughter, 18, 25-year-old daughter. I've told them consistently, like, I do not know what the world you're going to walk into in 3-5 years is going to look like. So plan accordingly.
So true.
I don't plan. Like you've just got to be flexible,
be
right?
adaptive, ready.
100%. And I also think, like, you know, people are often to follow your passion, this, that, the other. I mean, like, I think those are, you know, that doesn't really work. I mean, one of my friends talks about it. You know, do what you're great at, and your passion will follow. And actually, like, this podcast is a really great example of that. I was a linguist in my early kind of, well, certainly at university, right? And then kind of fell into finance, went round the houses, you know, running businesses and God knows where, and then coming back here, and then, you know, essentially falling into startups, and then falling in love with startups. And all of that brought me to a place where I'm able to write, talk, do this podcast, etc., which really makes me happy. But it's happened as a function of also my business, right? To an extent. Or you know, the people that I've met have been through the business and so on. And so I'm really fortunate in that I have something that really does make me happy. But I couldn't have planned for it. And I certainly didn't plan for it, right? Like, that wasn't the intention. But yeah, I think over optimizing for, we're not the Chinese government, 5-year plans. Yeah, I think the world is changing quickly. So I'd agree with that. And finally, so that we can get to know the real you, what is the thing that moves you the most emotionally?
I love joy and excitement, and sort of watching my daughter grow up. She's just about to turn 6. I think one of the biggest lessons in my life has been that kind of how children move between safety and excitement and learning. Nice. And that just sort of, they need you as a parent for that comfort. And then the moment they feel comfortable, they want to, run away and go and do something exciting and naughty and new and learn and kind of all that. And to me, that was just when I realized that that's how it was going with her back from, whatever early toddler years probably. And still, I just deeply try to lead that with me. I try to find lots of joy in the comfort of, the people that are close, who love me, who support me, and then kind of to venture out and to go and do really exciting, wild, new things where I'm learning things. So I think that balance and swinging between comfort and adventure is kind of like somewhere where I find deep joy. That's just really meaningful for me.
I love that. I think I'm a very similar personality. I like getting out of my comfort zone. Why? Or let me put it another way. I love learning, right? And when I'm learning something, that's what really gives me joy. Yeah. I think with kids, I think that's such a good analogy or such a good kind of way of thinking about it. It's like akin to, the first time they get on a bike, training wheels, that's the safety. Then the next stage of safety is taking off the training wheels, but you or the dad holding the seat, and then it's letting them go. But importantly, it's letting them fall, right? I think, and this is the thing that we often miss these days, is like actually nothing good comes out of easy things, right? Like there has to be that failure, that learning, that friction. Like otherwise, you just do not know how to deal with stuff, I think. But yeah, I think those are things that absolutely definitely give me joy and excitement as well. Milena, it's been incredibly wonderful having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for making the time to come out. For the audience, where can they find you online? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on X? Where can they find you on the internet?
I'm on LinkedIn. So on LinkedIn is a good place. And no, thank you so much for having me. Absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.